everybody, I'm Tom Vasel.
I'm Z Garcia.
I'm Mike DiLisio.
Today we're taking a look at Ragnarocks, which sounds like it's a sequel to some other game, but it's actually, as far as I can tell, a straight-up sequel to Santorini. Now, Santorini is published by Roxley Games.
Yes.
This one's published by Gray Fox Games. It's the same designer, so that's why we can talk about Santorini.
Yes.
And it also has, it's an abstract game that each player has a power that changes the game tremendously.
Yes.
Just like Santorini. The artwork, not done by Mr. Cuddington, who did Mr. Santorini. Mr. Cuddington did Santorini, but definitely made to look like that.
An homage? Can we say it's an homage?
I don't actually...
It's just similar enough where
Yes.
there's no separating the two.
I want to be clear that, with all due respect to this artist, I don't like this particular art much because it looks like chibis. It took me 15 years to get around to liking chibis.
Yeah.
And having a big head with a skinny, wispy body doesn't do anything for me.
You like the chunky little sort of...
Yeah, like the little chunky, I mean, those have been around, like Precious Moments stuff. That's been around our whole lives.
Yeah.
This has more of a bobblehead appreciance. So.
That's a hot
Yes,
take.
bobblehead. That's what these look like, bobbleheads.
I think the Precious Moments were the OG chibis is a hot take.
Precious chibis.
We should probably talk about this game, though.
How do you play it, though?
Here's how you play it.
Okay.
In the base game of this, each player has 3 of their warriors on their side. So you have the white and the red. And on a player's turn, you can pick one of the people, anywhere they are, and you're going to move them as far as you want in any of the 6 directions. When you're done with that, you're going to summon one of these rune stones, and you'll be able to shoot that out any distance from where you're at. So maybe they move here, the red person moves there. You cannot move through these, and you cannot move through your opponents. But you'll be able to drop these. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to form a section here to make your person settled. At some point, a region will be formed. So let's say this Viking goes there and summons a rune stone there. There is now an area that is surrounded by the wall that touches the sea and rune stones. And there's also only one color in it. If there's both colors, it's contested and you can keep moving. But since there's only one color, it could be 1 or 2 or 3 even. If there's just one color, when this happens, then this Viking is considered to be a settled Viking. He can no longer move. And so you're going to keep doing that until nobody can move any longer. Sometimes you can't move for whatever reason. Your opponent will keep going until nobody can move. So perhaps this is the end state. So at this point, you're going to count up the hexes in each area that's been settled. So white would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. You count where the people are 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 28, 29, 30, 33. While the reds have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 11, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32. Well, there you go. Whoever has more hexes is the winner. Now that is the base game of this, which you'll probably only play once in a great while. After that, you will draw, there's a whole stack here of different people. And your one player is going to pick 2 of the powers, and they're going to give them to the other player, and that other player will decide which power you'll be and which power your opponent will be. So for example, this one here, when you, instead of summoning a runestone, your Viking can move twice. You must move all nomadic Vikings one at a time if possible. Summon a runestone in each hex. Each Viking move from immediately after moving them. Do not summon normally. Here, you only have 2 Vikings instead of 3, but you can pass through unoccupied hexes or hexes with runestones in, but not both. This person, you can relocate an opponent's Viking adjacent to your Viking to the hex on the opposite side. Your selected Viking may trade places with an adjacent Viking. Here, you can secretly select one of the 3 Viking cards. Your opponent's Viking matching the card you select is replaced by a runestone before scoring. So you have little cards to match for that. Some of them come with these mountains, which only you can move through. Some of them are going to use dice, which might have some random movement based on the compass here. Some will come with alternate win conditions. Thor can summon runestones on this card rather than on any contested hex instead of summoning as normal. This guy can move any one of your Vikings 1 hex. And like I said, they all just have different things, and there's a whole pile of different ones that you're going to play with. And here, for example, during scoring, you score points for number of runestones in play instead of scoring normally. So they just count up the number of runestones. So this player is trying to put as many runestones on the map as possible. I also want to point out, everything fits in the tray here. This is not a great board, unfortunately. You can also play on this side if you like your eyes to bleed while moving the pieces around. Has some terrain there, which means pretty much nothing. The game can also be played in teams, which is nonsense. It is definitely a 2-player game, but you would just take different cards equal to the number of players in game and draft them. There's some powers that work specifically with multiple players. I highly recommend you play this 1 versus 1. All right, so before we jump into the game, the components, it's a mixed bag for me. We already talked a little bit about the art, but this board, sitting on top of this, again, something they stole straight from Santorini.
Yeah.
You know, because Santorini had the same thing.
Yeah.
At least the original printing did. The later ones did not have
That's true, it did not. But you don't need this at all.
You don't.
And, in fact, you're almost better off not playing with it because it's wibbly-wobbly.
And I prefer the non-art side on the board.
Oh, amen to that. I like art, but I don't actually like this art.
I don't love it.
And it's so much easier to see things.
It's busy. It does get in the way, unfortunately. The board is very quickly going to become crowded. And I think the artwork does not help keep everything clean. And you want an abstract game like this to be pretty clean.
I do like these. I know you're not as big a fan.
No, I like these okay. My problem with these is the base is a hexagon, but it's broken up in order to make it look like stone, which is a great effect. I think it looks great. But again, on the board, it gets a little messy. You turn this slightly off on the hexagon, and now it no longer looks right. And now it kind of looks round. You just looks like, and so that if things move a little bit on the board, again, visual clarity is a big one for me, especially in an abstract game in which I need to be able to decipher what I'm looking at quickly. These are great pieces. I think the visual clarity of them is a little, what did you say, wibbly-wobbly? Let's go with that.
Wibbly-wobbly. Okay, so let's talk about the game first before we... So there's the base game and the advanced game, but just like Santorini, I'm assuming they don't mean anyone to play the base game more than once. Right.
If that. I think if you've played abstract games, I don't even know that you need to start with the basic
In
game.
fact, I've only played it without the powers once with somebody, and after that, every new person I've taught it to, I just taught it to with the powers.
Yes.
Especially since the powers are kind of tiered. You know, you can have powers that are more straightforward than others. I wouldn't necessarily throw somebody in with one of the advanced powers right away. I'd give them one of the basic powers to work with.
I do like the concept of, well, I'll come back to powers. Let me talk about the base game.
All right.
Go through the desert. That's what you're doing. You're building parts of the board. It's a clever mechanism because you can slide and move around and throw out these to block other people, to try to pen them in, to move things around. I actually really like the base game. Even if there was no powers and this came out as a separate base game and it was just things, I would say, I don't know, I would give it like a huge score, but I'd be like, oh, that's a pretty solid game.
Yeah.
Whereas you have already said that it's fair game to compare this to Santorini, and I think it is fair game. I prefer the gameplay of Santorini because for some reason, this is even more abstract to me than Santorini is, as odd as that sounds.
Well, Santorini is those buildings, so I get that.
Yeah, for some reason, that just made more intuitive sense. I guess that I prefer kind of that spatial, the wind conditions in Santorini, I prefer to this, which is basically like, you're going to close people off, you're going to have area majority. I guess that mechanism is not as exciting to me as the mechanism in Santorini was.
I think mechanically this game is more commonplace.
Yeah, I agree.
Santorini feels like a very unique game.
Yes.
That's what I'm saying.
This does not.
Correct.
I like it, but I feel like I've played at least 50% of this before.
Kramer and Kiesling games reminds me of a lot of those kind of like, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you said some go, kind of, but I mean, Through the Desert is very close to this. Hey, That's My Fish is very close to this.
That doesn't mean I don't like it, though.
The sheep stacking one from Blue Orange.
Right, Battle Sheep, I think.
Battle Sheep or whatever, yeah. Yeah, that doesn't mean I don't like it either, but you're right that Santorini is distinct. It is its own thing. It's like no other abstract out there. This one isn't that.
Right. That being said, my favorite aspect of this game is probably something that I think was the best part of Santorini 2, and that is the powers, if we can talk about those. I think that's really what, elevates it beyond just the very simple mechanic. I mean, a lot of times they'll say, you can teach this game in 30 seconds. You can teach this game in 30 seconds.
Without the powers, especially.
Without the powers. Pick a character, move it as far as you want in a straight line. Wherever it stops, move one of these out as far as you want in a straight line, as long as it doesn't get, blocked by something else. That's it. You're trying to set up little areas of majority.
Yeah.
The powers are what make it go. And I've enjoyed, the powers I've played with so far, for the most part.
I really like the idea of one person picks two, hands them to the other person. That's a nice little I pick, you choose thing. Here's where, so you said Santorini's more original and all. I actually like this game, the base game, better than Santorini, even though I know it's more derivative. I just like the whole slide here, put this here, ha-ha type movement.
Yeah.
I think, though, the detraction I have from this game is I've played with not all the powers, but I've been going through them.
Yeah.
So many of them are not interesting in this game. I think the Santorini powers were way more interesting, changed the game up dramatically. Like in this game, there's one called Fenrir, who, if you end next to someone, if you start your turn next to your opponent, you lose.
You lose.
That's really cool. There's not many that are that cool. Some of them are like, move one of your opponents before you go. You can slide backwards in the opposite direction after you move. And while you can sit there and go, well, those are actually useful powers. They're useful, but they're not particularly powers that excite you to get.
They don't feel as game-changing. Like Fenrir feels game-changing. It's like an alternate win condition, and there were a few
And I don't think they all need to have alternate
too.
win conditions.
Yeah.
Right.
But I feel like I should go, ooh, and at least 4 or 5 of these powers are like the same. Like one's like if you're next to someone, you can switch space with them. Or you can move your opponent 3 spaces at the beginning of your turn. Or you can move twice. I'm like, those are all really similar.
Yes.
I get that. I feel like maybe there is maybe there's less design space here at the end of the day.
That might be true.
Right.
And because I can tell you, I could already do probably my top 5 in those.
Sure.
Because there's some that stand out. There's one that lets you push your opponent. That's really cool. The Fenrir one.
Yeah.
The one that lets you move through these.
Right.
One of them that these count for points instead of blank spots.
Right.
Those are like, whoa.
Yeah, they're different. They've turned the whole game upside down, right?
And I guess you need a few of those basic ones in there because it's a base game, right? But I just felt like there was so many of these boring powers that are in there.
And they even had to balance some of those powers by giving you a fewer number of your Vikings to start with on the board too.
And that's actually a nice balancing factor.
No, it is.
Yeah.
It really is, and it changes the feel of the game a bit too, which I think is needed.
You played the solo game.
I did play the solo game. Here's the rule sheet.
Don't rip it.
There's the flow chart. It's not good.
Wow.
I did not like it. This is not a game that I feel like lends itself well to solo.
Do you feel that way about any abstract game? Like, if I want to play chess solo, I'll play against a computer opponent, I suppose.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't want to play
Solo chess.
But I wouldn't want to play against like a board game version of that.
Yeah, it's just it runs off of
programming.
runs off of a flow chart and dice rolling. It's just not the way to play the game.
I think the way to play the game is also
players.
just 2 players. This goes to 6?
Yeah, you each get a special power. You can control one of the Vikings or whatever, and it's like, come on.
It's a 2-player
Two-player
game. Even Santorini did the whole 2 or 3. And I know some people like it with 3. It's a 2-player game. That's really where it shines. This shines at 2. That's where you want to play, I think.
So what would you give this?
I like it. I'm going to give it a 7. It's a nice, solid game for me. The things that are pulling it down from there, production quality, definitely. This board with the holes and it's floppy. It's really just not good. You don't need to put it on this thing, but then it's got these 4 holes in it. I just don't like it visually, and the busy side I don't like. So that's pulling it back for me. The powers, like you said, are a little scattershot. Some are going to be fun, some are going to give you a less than ideal game session. Gameplay, not the most original thing ever, and there's a lot to live up to after Santorini. But I enjoy it. I had a good time with this. I'm happy to throw this down right now and puzzle out some things. So I like it. I think a nice solid 7 from me.
I don't like it as much. I'm giving it a 5.5. I just feel like if I'm going to play a abstract game, There are others I would always choose, Santorini being one of them. Let's just start right there. I would never, ever, ever choose this over Santorini. There are production issues that I think do play into it as well. But fundamentally, I just don't think that the gameplay, the core gameplay is as compelling to me because it really boils down to area majority. And I don't feel like that is as exciting of a framework to build an abstract game around as something like Santorini, or even some of the other, like, was it Torres, the Kramer Kiesling game? I just kind of like, I just think that that's a more exciting mechanism than area majority. So 5.5 for me.
I'm actually with Z on this one. I'm giving it also a 7. I feel like I want to give it an 8.5.
Wow.
I want to, but there's the problems that bring it down to a 7. Because this is the sliding around, cutting people off, that's one of my favorite styles of abstract games. I think that's fun. You can make some really clever moves sometimes, to trap someone, or you get caught in those clever moves yourself.
It feels like you go back on being the offensive and defensive.
Yes.
Right, and I like that feeling of like, oh, I'm on the trying to run away from you, and sometimes I'm the attacker, and that can switch in the game. I like that.
Yeah.
And I like the special powers. I just wish they were more flamboyant. And considering how many are in the game, if there was just 10, I'd be like, well, maybe more will come. With as many, I feel like maybe they did stretch that.
Yeah.
But at least they're there. They do give you some difference between them. I like most of the components, so it's a solid game. It could have been even better, but as it is, I played this 10 times already, I think. I've really been enjoying it. But it just, those things hold me back from giving it a higher score. So that's Ragnarocks. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time, I'm Tom Vasel.
I'm Z Garcia.
I'm Mike DiLisio.
Stay away from Fenrir.
Wow.